What's going on, everyone? Today we're going to be covering what emissions has done to diesel engines. We spoke about this on our last live, and there's still a lot to cover. So let me know where you're watching from if you're joining us this evening. Let me make sure my chat is up. Looks like it's working. We'll wait to get started. Let me know where everyone's watching from. If you got any questions or you want to go ahead and give some of your feedback on what you think about what emissions have done to diesel engines. On our last broadcast, somebody brought up the SCANA and how they eliminate the DPF filter, which was pretty interesting. I didn't get time to look into that one, but it's going to be something that's going to probably be adopted. I was testing the audio. Let me know if you guys can hear me. Philippines, how you guys doing out there? Thanks for joining us. I seen one of our viewers just recently took a course. Looked like they were more working on gensets, which are the stationary diesel engines. Those gensets, they the same engines. Well, I wouldn't say the same. They're actually larger, but the same style engines that are in diesel trucks are used for generators as well, and they're considered genset is what they're called, but they actually make them a lot larger, and these diesel engines run very large generators. They can run power plants. They run them. They use them for backup power for like hospitals and stuff like that. Very strong setup. But I saw one of the viewers that I believe he's from Vietnam and looked like he was out there taking a course. What's up, Manuel? What's up, Georgia? Georgia's in the house. Dallas, Texas. What's going on? Appreciate that. Glad you guys can hear us. All right. It's going to get today started. I did put a highlight on there. Let me go ahead and get this camera here. How you guys doing this evening? I did put in the title that we're going to be discussing about hack deletes. I wanted to circle back around to what we were discussing on our last broadcast about what emissions control has done to the diesel engine development. And in that process of developing a diesel engine, there's a lot of things that are involved. As I mentioned before, there's engineers involved. Now, the engineers that are doing all these upgrades, they're assigned with different tasks. The engineers that are in control or that are in charge of the electronic control, which is what's running the engine, running the ECM, everything, all the components, they're being tasked to create these engines to be tamper-proof. So more and more as these trucks become more modern and develop more and more, these engineers are creating it more complicated for these engines to be deleted. And that's when I say delete. They're basically just eliminating the after treatment system, and it's done in a lot of different ways. Most of the time they're hacking into the and overriding the files onto the ECM, which is nothing new. It's been going on for a really long time, and in some cases it works fine. You won't have any issues, but in other cases it actually decreases the longevity of the engine, especially if you combine it with not keeping up with your maintenance. Maintenance is going to be a key on all trucks, but if you mix that up with if you mix it up with mild care or not good care on the engine, and then you turn around and do a delete, and thinking, hey, you know what, now I got less maintenance to worry about, and I don't have to do anything to the truck. And here you go, maybe a year after delete or so, you can have some issues with it. I'm gonna get to guys' questions. I appreciate your guys' comments. Yeah, EGRs. My last broadcast, we discussed why EGRs were developed. EGRs were basically just catching spent energy, which is coming out of the exhaust. We talked about how back in 2003, diesel engines are only about 40 to 45% efficient, meaning they're only capturing 45% of what the energy it makes. So that's really low. That's a lot of waste being happening. So the EGR was an approach to capture some of that spent waste, recirculate it into the intake. But yes, it does create a hotter cylinder, and I discussed that as well, about how more coolant had to be run through the head, so there was more metal taken out. But I'm glad you brought that up, because this goes in line with the deletes. Okay, so whenever, let me get some more of this coffee in so that I can get all these points across. Let me know where you're watching from. If you got any questions, let me know. Appreciate everybody that's joining us this evening. All right, so coffee's good. So whenever they start running these hack deletes, what it's going to do is pretty much eliminate the files and then change the calibration, which is mostly just going to change how much fuel is going into the cylinder. But whenever an engine is actually manufactured, a DD15 or most of the modern engines, they're tuned with an EGR running. So what an EGR is going to do, an EGR is going to recirculate the exhaust gases, but it will increase the cylinder temperature. Now, what a modern tune will do is adjust for that. Okay, so of course a cylinder is mostly just going to be air and fuel. So if the air is going to be a little bit warmer, then the calibration is going to be set different, so that a way that there will be a complete combustion or a complete burn of all the fuel that's being put in there. So what deletes do, some deletes will do, hack deletes, is will eliminate the EGR, okay, which is running a hotter cylinder now. Let me take this back. In turn, they're actually cooling the cylinder off because they're not recirculating the EGR gases back in the intake. But they're raising the temperature back up by adding more fuel. So a lot of these deletes will come with increasing fuel. So when you increase fuel in these cylinders that were designed to run at a certain temperature, and of course now you don't have EGR flow, so the temperature may not be the same, but when you're dumping more fuel, it actually could be a lot hotter. So when that happens, that's when you have burnt valves. That's when you have scuffed liners. That's when you start having that low performance, and that's what we mean about cutting down on longevity when it comes to messing with these deletes. And some of these deletes are successful. I'm not saying none of them are, and some of them are successful. That's kind of why I wanted to kind of dive more into this, about how these regulations are creating different developments with diesel engines, and people are doing the workarounds to try to work around these modifications. But from what I see, it looks like they're just going to try to make it more complicated and more complicated. Got a viewer here in the comments, somebody in the chat. He's sharing his experience with his delete. What he says: I have a DEF deleted truck. Can you undo DEF deletes trying to sell it? Man, I don't think you're gonna be able to do. You're not gonna be able to undo a delete. You don't have to. You won't be able to undo a delete without spending crazy amount of money. To undo a delete, that's a 2000 and you have a 2001. What's the reason why you want to get rid of it? Is it the rates? I know the rates are been in a pretty, not as great as they used to be. It's been a decline since COVID. If you guys aren't familiar with all that money just that to get injected into the economy created a big spike in the ordering, and it's just been kind of a normalizing, bouncing down the bottom on the rates. The hurricane was supposed to bump it up a little bit, but it didn't too much. But back on these deletes, I know a lot of people know a lot of people are doing the deletes. Let me know what you guys think about those. If they're working for you, that's great. And I'm not saying that go and do this. It's still illegal. They're still doing big penalties for people that are doing deletes. If it wasn't something that was frowned upon, they wouldn't be putting so much effort into finding people that are doing it. Cummins is coming out with, I mentioned on my last broadcast how they are, just every time an engine comes out, with a newer year model or whatnot, they have some upgrades. So this particular upgrade is going to not allow the computer to be accessed remotely. Have I mentioned before, some of these hack deletes are actually done remotely, which means a computer is sent to the user, and they connect to the computer, and of course someone else does it remotely, someone that's not in the United States. And the reason why they do that, or someone that's hiding their IP address in the United States, and the reason why they do that is because it's illegal. It's illegal. If it wasn't illegal and it wasn't fined, people weren't being fined on. People would, it wouldn't be so difficult or challenging to do. So it's illegal. So it makes it a lot more complicated to have a high quality tune that you're expecting. So I would just recommend that you run these engines a lot different than you should with something that doesn't have an aftermarket treatment system. That's why you have those idle cutoffs, and you have those different types of settings so that you're not creating too much soot in your truck and clogging up these filters. But it's very interesting how Scana's coming out with their system, their SCR system that doesn't have a DPF. That's gonna save a lot of people some time, and then of course once they with the hydrogen, but it's a long process. I know that we're all waiting for these changes, and it's just costing everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. Halloween's coming up, if you guys celebrate that or not. Let me know if you got any questions about your truck. We're still talking about emissions and what they've done. Now we're up to about 50% efficient on modern engines, which is still low. As I mentioned, 50% of catching the energy in a modern diesel engine is still very low, and we're in 2024, which is, we should be a lot higher than that. Yeah, rates have been tough. Yeah, brokers. Well, everybody blames the brokers, but sometimes the pay is not there on the rates. Suppose we'll see what happens if I don't want to get into politics, but if we'll see what happens if things change up in the house. So just trying to catch up with you guys' comments, making sure I don't miss anybody. Let me know if you got any questions. So as I mentioned, vehicles are up to about 50%. Modern diesel engines are about 50% now. And after they added the after treatment systems, and now they're dealing with the tamper proof, is basically what they call the software. It's tamper proof. So they're creating the software so it's basically impossible to hack. But a lot of these hackers, they're not getting updated software. They're using the same software just across everybody's same truck, and some of them are successful. But what I'm just getting at is there's going to be better ways. Just keeping up with the maintenance on this. This is not a system that you can just forget about. any vehicle you're gonna have maintenance on it, with the after treatment system, it just adds more. It just adds more. And I understand everyone's frustration when it comes to these. And it comes with a lot of different parts. And I know the cost of parts is crazy. You know, I was looking at an article today, and it says Volvo has recalled 160,000 trucks. 160,000 trucks. Check this. Let me go to the share screen. 126,000 Volvo trucks recalled as part of a massive Bendix ECM recall. You know this Volvo. I've been involved with some of these. I've been involved with them as a parts supplier as well. And this is not something new. This is not something new, is what I've learned. And I've learned the hard way, because sometimes we depend on them to supply some quality parts. And you know, they have dropped the ball when it comes to supplying us with some good parts. And I can imagine what they see in their own house, in-house as well. So it kind of spiked me to do some more information about, you know, Bruckner's and Volvo. Volvo is who Bruckner's is. Everyone's familiar. But you know, these people have already been in numerous class action lawsuits. And they also, and it's in documents, that they've tried to conceal defects. They've tried to conceal defects in lawsuits. But the thing is, they're so massive, and these problems happen at such a national level, that they're not able to kind of like pinpoint them and to figuring out, hey, well, this is their problem. But the fact that they've already had, they have so many lawsuits on failed parts. It says Volvo Trucks has faced multiple lawsuits related to alleged manufacturing defects in their semi-truck parts. For example, in a class action lawsuit from 2011, Platinus claimed that Volvo concealed defects in the D13 and D16 engine, which led to the frequent breakdowns and insufficient repair support from the company. Of course, they don't want to support, and they want to deny the claims very often. And it says that they try to conceal the defects, which just shows that they don't want to pay it out. And I see it. Additionally, Volvo faced a $130 million penalty from the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in 2023. Very, very recent. So I don't know. That kind of makes me upset with them. And I'm sure this is probably the same with most manufacturers. And what I'm getting at is just, guys, be careful when it comes to getting these trucks repaired, whether anywhere that you're at. Just because you're going to a dealer doesn't mean that these guys are going to be doing an honest job. A lot of times the non-dealers and the smaller shops are the ones that really rely on their I guess you would say
reputation. As for dealers, they get so big to a point where they're just kind of moving people through there, and they don't want to take responsibility for the manufactured parts that could be defected. The manufacturers are third party individuals as well. They think, oh, the parts that we are manufacturing are perfect, and this is probably going to be on all platforms. This is not probably just with Volvo. If we look into Detroit, or Daimler probably has the same.
Probably not going to be any different. Yeah, every manufacturer is the same. It looks like this one, they had a wow.
You know, I guess welcome to America. Welcome to America. Welcome to America. Everywhere is everywhere. Daimler's got a bunch of them out there too. So I can imagine this after treatment system has probably even caused even more lawsuits out there. So I mean, just goes to show that the reason why I circled to that is because I know that some people rather choose a dealer over a small truck shop, but sometimes these dealers are not on the up and up, and we've seen it firsthand. And I don't mean to shine too much light on dealers, but I've realized sometimes people are not going to look out for you, or even sometimes when you do something nice, it doesn't always work out for the best. So and then whenever it's either the dealer's gonna pay or you're gonna pay, more than likely dealer's gonna say they're not gonna pay, and they're gonna throw somebody under the bus. And when I've seen concealment in documents, and then I read that they've already been open for concealment or proved that they've been trying to conceal, just shows how a dealer like that, or someone that's nationwide doing business, can not be honest with their customer like that. So it just doesn't make sense to me. So we talked about the hacking deletes on the ECM, which is something that's really popular because a lot of people are going to do this. What's the first thing they're going to think of whenever they do this? They're going to think, hey, I don't have to deal with maintenance no more. I don't have to deal with this after treatment system no more. All I got to do is change the oil once a year. And over time, if you guys have some good success with it, you know, kudos to you. But as I mentioned, it's getting more complicated. It's illegal. People are starting to actually take action, you know. So let me know what you guys have been doing. I mean, I know you guys probably don't want to talk about it, but you know, I meant like if you had something. We've had a bunch of broadcasts before where some people would mention, hey, you know what, I got this delete, and they end up not working out right. Yeah, I got a guy here. The best for every truck is to keep it how it was made by the manufacturer and don't change anything. Exactly. I agree with that. And I agree with that with cars as well. Like once you start modifying stuff and messing with stuff, I noticed that you're going to have to start tweaking it more and more. And it just ends up becoming more work for you, to be honest with you. Another thing I wanted to cover, and I think I mentioned it earlier, is how Cummins is what they're doing is creating an ECM that's not remotely accessed. I know I brought that up a little bit earlier, so they're just gonna make that a little bit more complicated for people to be able to hack into their systems. And it's just requirements. It's in whenever the viewer asked earlier today, and earlier here, it's in the comments. He was asking if he can reinstall the after treatment system, and the reason why that's going to be it can be expensive is because every after treatment system that's been modified is going to be modified in different ways. So this one could be a sensor eliminated. For Freightliners are going to have a CPC, which is the ECM that's hooked up in the cab, and then you have a ECM that's on the engine, and then you have an ACM, which is the computer that runs the after treatment system. Now all three of these ECMs are communicating with each other. And most of the time with modern engines, these tunes or these hack deletes are going to be the same. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll eliminate the other ECMs, but a lot of times they're having to do different things, because if you eliminate the CPC, which is communication from the engine to the truck, sometimes the truck won't start. That's why you see in some cases where you'll have a CPC failure happen or an ECM failure happen due to a tune, and it won't start. And I've actually shared this information once before, because as the comment came in earlier about you shouldn't modify vehicles as after they're been manufactured. Besides that, because and it's the same with computers. Computers are manufactured a certain way, and a lot of times it's not a surprise that manufacturers are going to build, or anything's going to be built at a value or somewhat at a discount so that their money profitability can be made. They're not going to make these ECMs out of the most top quality material out there. They're going to look at what the requirements are, and they're going to just spec it out, and then that's what they're going to build it at. And so, the cheapest they can build it, the more profitable they're going to be. That being said, so when you put a performance tune in place, something that's pushing the internals a lot harder than they're made for, this can cause premature wear. This is all factors that I like to mention whenever we talk about hag deletes, that it's not just about the after treatment system, but it is about the internal components and all the electric components all combined, because all of these work together. Engines since electronics and engines been mechanical and electronics been combined, everything has to run seamlessly. And for any kind of change or any kind of something that's off on the computers are pretty much running the engine. It's not like these older engines. Make sure to hit that like button if you're on this evening. If you're playing this back, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to us if you're not subscribed to us already. If you're in the DFW area and you're looking for service, if you have after treatment system, if you're a fleet manager, or if you own a fleet, if you're in charge of a fleet and you're having issues with after treatment, or your shop's not being able to get them out fast enough, hit us up. We have we have some skill and a lot of experience in after treatment systems and troubleshooting these electrical problems and a lot of these issues. So give us a shout or give us a chance. If your shop is not turning them around fast enough, check us out. One thing that I wanted to mention is that I had let me pull this up here. Go back to this. And there was a video that I just recently it was a short, and I got some new videos coming out, guys. Let me know what you want to see, and I'll work on getting those made. I'm gonna do some updates on common issues. I want to give you a kind of like a more of an insight on how these trucks actually operate, especially the DD15. I wanted to give you an overview on the dual overhead cam design. We did mention earlier, I mentioned in my last broadcast how they did get rid of the injector cam, but they still run a dual overhead cam, one for the intake dedicated strictly for the intake, and another one dedicated for the exhaust and engine brake. Very, very, very nice setup. It is kind of light. I don't like the aluminum rocker box, but that's something that I wanted to bring up. Yesterday's story was basically about what to listen for. If you didn't check out yesterday's story, check it out. It was just kind of giving you some ideas on what to look for or what to listen for, to be exact. If you're concerned, we had somebody come in and we weren't able to kind of pinpoint the problem. He said he had a knocking noise and it was under a load. Now, the more we looked into it is, the more we kind of we looked at the codes. A lot of times when we come in, when you guys come in with the report that we cannot duplicate in the shop, and those particular faults are going to be the most trickiest, the ones that are actually under load on heavy hills. We had a viewer yesterday, I'm pretty sure you're with me today, whenever you were going up the hill, you said that is whenever your check engine light came on. So when these engines are going uphill and they're loaded, they're under a load condition that is very difficult to duplicate in the shop. The guy that was joined us yesterday, if you're with us this evening, that truck that you mentioned that was going and the low conversion of the NOx was triggering whenever you were going uphill under a heavy load, I would definitely do a boost check, check your sensors, EGR cooler, things like that. Because the sensors and any kind of air leak, when you're under a load like that, and when I mean that the engine's under load, that means the boost pressure is close to max. A lot of these trucks have very high boost pressures. So, 20, 30 PSI is a boost. It's dumping fuel. So any kind of leak or any kind of sensor that's reading incorrectly, for example, what I've noticed on these Volvos and a lot of these different engines that are EGR controlled, there is a differential pressure sensor that will measure the pressure from the exhaust pressure and the pressure going into the EGR cooler, and if the difference is there is how they regulate how this valve is going to be open. Now, very simple idea, but over time, this soot ends up building in through these channels and building in through these sensors, and it blocks the sensor and it doesn't give them a correct reading. And as I mentioned earlier, once these electronics and mechanical started working together, mechanical is fast. Okay, mechanical is like there's no delay. Of course, electronics are fast as well, but once they're depending on correct readings on sensors, they have to react, and of course, in time as these mechanical engines are running. So you can see how some of these sensors, if they start getting clogged up, any kind of intake sensor, you have intake sensors, you have exhaust sensors. Sorry, I was looking at this preview, looking too serious over here. I was just trying to make sure I get all this information out to you guys. So all these different sensors can be affected by soot. Make sure to hit that like. Make sure to hit that like button. Anybody that's in the trucking industry, if you feel like they can use this information, they find this information useful, make sure to share this information to them. And if you want to share your experience, hit it up in the chat or hit it up in the comments. Also, there's super chat if you feel generous and you want to get your comment highlighted. If you're in a DFW area and you're looking for service, we have express service, up-to-date equipment. We have technicians that are ready to go, very professional and clean. Give us a shout, 972-225-3017, or you can hit us up, pull up, and we'll take care of you guys. 4140 Langdon Road. We're just south of Interstate 20, right there on Bonnet View Roads. A few truck stops there. TA, believe there's a new racetrack there as well. Lot of construction going on in that area, so there's a lot of, I'm sure there's a lot of deliveries there. FedEx passes through there all the time. We're very close to parts suppliers, so we are able to get your guys in and out. Free coffee and a lounge, so check us out. So the video that I released yesterday, I wanted to cover because it was really interesting. Because after okay, yeah. You got the viewer from yesterday. Yeah, he said that there was a defect on the Volvo bull gears. Yeah, they've been known. All the manufacturers. If I Die says he loved the Series 60. Yeah, that was a good engine. Before they started trying to add emissions to it, that's when it kind of got a little bit just unreliable. Can I recommend a shop up in Maryland? No, I can't. But if I have some Maryland shops that are watching me, give me a shout. I can interview them over the phone. I'd love to open up in more locations. And I would, I'd like to get some guys on our team that feel the same way about being, their professionalism and their interest in trucks. I am here with my Volvo. Still have the check engine light, but I would have an EGR code if that sensor is clogged. It's weird because it doesn't have any codes. Well, the reason why I was mentioning the EGR is because those possibly could get clogged up over time. But what I'm saying is for us to duplicate the truck under such high load conditions, as I mentioned, boost pressure up to 20 30 psi when you're under a load pulling a hill. We do offer boost pressure tests where we'll put a boot on the system and pressurize it. I just mentioned that those are one things that need to be checked. And you're right, if there's a sensor that's clogged up, it's possible it could throw a code. But in some cases, if they're clogged, they might not fault out. They just give a false reading. So that's what I was mentioning, that, for example, if you have a differential pressure sensor that's not faulted out but clogged, it could be reading incorrectly and then send a signal to open and close the EGR valve when really it's not supposed to be open or closed. And it's possible, yeah, you should be getting some faults, but it is possible that some mechanical errors and some intermittent faults will not give you a check engine light. But I do recommend that you get somebody to check it out that has Impact, which is Volvo based software, or Tech Tool. I'm sorry. It's Tech Tool, which is Volvo based software. These softwares are more in depth. They're made by the manufacturers, so it gives you a lot more detailed information compared to a third-party diagnostic scanner or whatnot, which is going to give you kind of like a short description of what the code is. Manufacturer software, even though it may be a little bit higher, it's more in depth about what you're going to be looking for, what the possible causes for, the proper troubleshooting procedures, which will give you a more overview of everything that needs to be checked. Because a lot of times drivers are the ones that have the most information to give us when it comes to troubleshooting. Troubleshooting can be tricky, but when drivers sit there and give us the information that, hey, it's doing it only under a load, only when I'm pulling this when I feel something, it's very important to pay attention to these noises. And that's why I was trying to I was moving over to the video that I made yesterday. So now the video that I made yesterday was just a clip, and these are just short films that I'm putting up so that I can try to get you some information out there that's useful. That seemed like it was received well. And it talked about just noises. So let's talk about a few noises. First, let's talk about knocking noise or knocking sound. So if you hear a knocking noise, especially when idling or under a load, this could mean issues with the fuel injectors or even something in the cylinders. So don't ignore it, okay? Make sure to get that checked out. If you have a knocking noise, something while it's under a load, as I mentioned, it could be something fuel related. There could be balance tests that are done. If it's a Cummins, you can do a performance test on the injectors. Make sure that your fuel filters are being changed regularly. I wouldn't suggest you go way over your filter replacement. Like 20,000 miles is probably good enough, especially now that we're coming into the season changing, where it's going to get a lot colder in the morning, and then in the afternoon it's just going to be warm. That's going to cause a lot of condensation. That's kind of why when I circle back to the shorts that I make, those shorts, I talked about air dryers as well. Don't forget your air dryers. Some people, I recommend the minimum once a year, but some people are doing them twice a year, and that's not excessive. I would definitely do that because we had a customer just recently came in, and we did the filter, and I mentioned before, if you don't change the filter, they can become seized to the dryer housing, and you'll have to replace the dryer. In some cases as well, these dryers are not even available. Some of them are like 3 or 4 days out, so it's not as easy as just replacing a part anymore. So make sure to change these dryers. A lot of the maintenance that's coming into place is going to be pretty common. So like, filter replacements, that's very common, where there is fuel filters, oil filters, or engine filters, dryer filters, cabin filters. Do these seasonal. Make sure to do all that seasonal. So I wanted to mention that about the knocking noise. We're going to move. There's a couple more indicators. Now, these are just kind of like light or, just kind of light indicators. If it's something that's really serious, you're going to know. Drivers are the ones that are with the truck most of the time. Mechanics really don't drive the truck. We don't really feel the truck. We don't know how the truck's going to operate under loads, under a curve, on this curve. And as a driver, you start to kind of notice, hey, something's up with this truck. It feels different. It doesn't have the power, or I hear this noise. Something else to look out for is hissing or whistling noise. Okay, a high-pitched hiss can mean that there's an air leak somewhere in the intake system, a bad gasket. This noise can worsen over time with our higher RPMs. So keep an ear out on those. The viewer that was talking about having that black smoke or having the NOx conversion fault happen under a load while he's going up a hill, this is something you could be looking out for. If you are hearing any kind of whistling or any kind of hissing noise, that could be an indication that you're having a boost leak. Now, how does that change? How does that cause a check engine light to happen? Well, what's going to happen is an engine inside the cylinder is basically just fuel and air. So if you don't have the amount of air that you're supposed to be having that is expected, then of course you're going to create more soot. It's not going to be a clean burn, and then it's going to work its way down the tailpipe. The sensors aren't going to be able, or the SCR system is not going to be able to convert the excessive soot, because they're actually designed to only eliminate the certain amount of soot. So when you have something that's throwing the tune off and creating more soot, it's just going to throw a check engine light. So if you're still on, let me know. Do you hear any of this? The next item you want to be listening out for is and this one's pretty obvious, is a ticking or a tapping noise. This could be something minor. It could be a loose lifter, which I don't consider minor. That's not minor. Or something serious like a problem with the valve train. It's a good idea to get it checked out. So ticking noise, yeah, it can be some lifters. I had a video that I put up yesterday. Let me see if I find this video so we can have an idea of what ticking noise you guys can be looking out for. Let me find it here. I think it was this one. I wonder if you guys can hear that. So I got some video here. I don't know if you guys can hear it. But I hear a bit of ticking in this one, and I was trying to use this as an example. But ticking noise is something you want to check out. You want to make sure to keep your ear out for that. All right, so ticking, hissing, and knocking. Knocking, hissing, whistling, ticking, tapping. That's your truck's language, all right? So listen out for it. Listen out for it. If you need help troubleshooting your truck, give us a shout, 972-225-3017. We're located off of 4140 Langdon Road, Dallas, Texas, 75241. We'll be more than happy to give you a hand. Let me see what we're going to make sure I don't miss anything. Oh, another thing, I was reading this other article. Let me know what you guys, if you guys got any experience with this sucker here. Let me show you. Let me show you what you got. So this is the Endurant made by Eaton. Now, remember I told you these manufacturers are coming out with their own drive lines, so they're keeping it all in-house. So this is Cummins transmission. PACCAR makes their own, Detroit. But what's funny is Eaton still looks like they're the ones making everything. And these transmissions here, I got one here tore down in the shop. Let me pull it up. And I wanted to do more of an in-depth video on this, about this transmission, because these are what are replacing. These are what are replacing manual shifted transmissions. Okay. So let me give you a breakdown on how these things work. All right. Here's a different one. This one's one out of a Volvo. So this is not an Endura. This is not the same transmission. So guys, don't beat me up. It's not an Endurant. But if you look at the two, let me see if I can get them side by side. If you look at the two, and I've been dealing with semi trucks before these newer style transmissions started coming out. They used to do these completely different. But they used to actually make these sometimes with even a clutch, which was semi. It was an automatic without the shifter, but it still had a clutch, which was odd. And these are all still the same. They're still basically just a gearbox. They're just a gearbox. Like, here's the bottom of the gearbox on this one. Here's the bottom of the gearbox on this one. And all they do is put a mechanical, something mechanical with arms, and this one's actually air driven, and this one's electrical, and all it is just electronic arms that are moving the gears internally. So it's basically still a automated system, or a manual system, but instead of you shifting the gears, and here's a top view of it. So if you take off this top part of the transmission, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see just basically a shifter. This particular transmission is a Volvo. This is not the same as their Endura. The Endura is going to have 2 counter shafts. This one looks like it just has 1 main shaft. But what I'm getting at is these transmissions, they just basically just all are the same. It's a manual transmission with an electronic driver up top. And what I noticed is with this particular transmission here, this Endura, I've seen some failures come in. Endurant. I've seen some failures come in, and most of the time what happens is it's called a dynamic stress fracture. So let me finish explaining how these transmissions work. Here's the front of the transmission. This is the bell housing that bolts onto the back of the engine. You're facing the transmission. Okay, so this is the throwout bearing here that disengages the clutch. If you're familiar with how a clutch works, you push the clutch and it disengages from the spinning engine. This input shaft here is what goes into the clutch and drives the gear. Whenever the clutch is grabbing the flywheel, that clutch is keyed into this shaft here, and that's what spins the transmission. Now, with a manual transmission, which this is a manual transmission, but an automated transmission, I should say it still looks like a manual. Okay, so now they're taking away you pushing the pedal down, and now it's being pushed down by this particular bracket here. So on this side of the bracket, there's a pivot ball, and on this side of the bracket, it goes into a solenoid, and when air is applied, it pushes this bracket and forces that throwout bearing into the clutch and disengages the clutch. This side here is it's called a internal brake. It's kind of like a stop brake. So air ends up getting transferred over here once this clutch is this lever is being pushed down to disengage the clutch. This air gets initiated here, and there's small little brakes in there that slow down the counter shafts so that the top of the transmission, which is this controller here, can put it in gear. Okay, so that's basically what an automated system looks like. So what I've noticed, and when you have to do a clutch, it's going to be a good idea to replace these. There's going to be some disc in here. When you do a clutch, a whole kit, it comes with everything you need. If you are getting a clutch done, make sure to have them do that for you. Make sure to hit that like button if you're dealing with a drivetrain issue. As you can see, we're pretty in depth with what we know. We got all the equipment as well. We can get these trucks overhead and get them the transmissions in and out. I got a guy that can get it out. I can get a transmission out, quick, especially with lifts now. Because a lot of times if these guys are doing it really cheap for you out there and they're doing it right there in the parking lot, you're risking lining up this transmission back correctly, putting everything back on like it's supposed to. Guys taking shortcuts. So give us a shout, 972-225-3017. We're located off of 4140 Langdon Road, Dallas, Texas 75241. Give us a shout. We're just south of we're on Bonneview Road, just south of Interstate 20. So I know you guys are pretty familiar with that area. So let's keep moving on with this transmission that I keep seeing issues with. Now, my next photo on this, let me go here. I was going to do a whole video on this particular failure because I started to see it more often. But what you can do, all right, this looks like more like the one that we're looking at. This looks like more like the Endurer. Okay. If you look at a regular standard transmission, the setups are going to be the same. You have the main shaft, the counter shafts. It's pretty much the same. But what I've noticed with these types of failure, just keeping up with your oil changes. Now, I know I did a video that was talking about shorter intervals when it comes to changing your oil. What I would recommend is definitely going by what your manufacturer's, what your owner's manual is going to say. Usually it's going to give you a more accurate. And if you really are worried, you can do a oil analysis. And I wanted to show you this one. Looks like the Volvo. Now, all these different automated systems, their boxes are still the same, but the way that they're engaging and disengaging the clutch can be different. As for example, look at this one. This one's using a whole different style. This one looks like a magnetic style, electronic style. Excuse me. This is an electronic solenoid. So they're all different, but they all do the same. And here is actually, they have a crazy name for this thing. It's like a Megatronic. I think it's called a Megatronic. This is what bolts on the top of your transmission, and this is what's shifting your gears. This is what I mean. It's still basically a manual system, but this is Megatron's arm. I guess it would say is it's one of his hands, Megatron's hands. You can see this thing, it's massive. But hey, you know what? It looks a lot more durable than the ones that they used to make. Because I mentioned I saw these when they first started coming out, the Eaton automated systems, the first ones, and they were awful. And the controllers like this one, this is massive. The controllers that they used to have, the XY shifters, if you still have some of the older models out there, they're called XY shifters. They were not this massive. But look at this thing. That's why it's got that name, the Megatron. I'm probably saying it wrong, but that's this thing. That's this whole top piece. So they're using these on mostly all modern engines. This one's already been out. But what I've noticed is they're all the same. The manufacturers are all the same. They're all the same. They're all coming up with their own design. Let me get let's wrap up some of these comments, guys. Let me see what you guys got to say. If you guys want to hit up super chat, let me know, or it's there. Figured we had a good broadcast this evening. Here we go. Yes, I heard one time when I was removing the valve cover, I didn't tighten up that plastic tube, and I heard whistling noise. And I know what you're saying, but now I don't have any noise. Okay, so you don't have that noise. Good. Be careful working on your truck, man. In my country, customers find ways to turn off the exhaust system and all types of vehicles. Yeah, same here. Same here. I want to contact and exchange work and knowledge. Please let me be friends on social networking platforms so I can learn more from you, teacher. Yes, sir. That's from Vietnam. Nice to join us. Appreciate everyone that's joined us this evening. I'm going to wrap up today's broadcast. I'm glad that everyone was able to join us, and I hope you are able to take something away from this live broadcast. If so, then I feel like our work was done today. Make sure to give us a call if you're in the DFW area, 972-225-3017. You can reach us at 4140 Langdon Road, Dallas, Texas, 75241. We got fleet maintenance, bus maintenance, RV, light and medium and heavy duty diesel. Give us a shout. Be sure to follow us on here. Hit that like, and make sure you're subscribed so when we go live again that you're going to be notified. We'll talk to you next time, and everybody be safe. Looks like we got a couple questions, or one question. Let me see here. Let me catch this question before you leave. How long that I-shift transmissions last on Volvo? They can differ. I've seen them go 700-800. But whenever you do an I-shift clutch and you do it all, make sure. Let me go back to that. Make sure you're doing all this. You know, you're doing this actuator. You know, when you're doing these clutches. These clutches are not like the older. These are not older clutch like the older style. You need the right equipment to line everything up. If not, you can have some issues tearing it back down and redoing it again, or the clutch might not last that long. So if you are needing a clutch replacement on the I-shift or any kind of automated system, the clutches are heavier. The components are different. Make sure whoever is servicing your truck is doing the right job. They're familiar with what they're working on. And in addition, then we're talking about clutches. Now, this shows a picture of the fly. Let me see if I get a better picture of the flywheel housing. Okay, this here. Okay, look at this particular picture. This is a picture of the back of an engine. Now, this here is the flywheel housing. As you can see, this bolt hose is where the transmission bolts up to this, and then there's your input where your spline or your input shaft goes. Okay, so what we've seen in the past is high mileage trucks. You know, when you bolt these transmissions back on there, sometimes these flywheel houses can be worn, okay? Because this is an aluminum flywheel housing. You can see how it's made out of aluminum. They make them out of aluminum because they want the engine to be light and for heat as well. But what I don't like about it is, okay, you got, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 bolts holding on transmission, a 700-800 pound transmission to the back of this 4,000 pound engine, and is transferring all this power over. So if you do get any kind of clutches replaced and now you feel extra power, and that you're gonna feel that torque, all that power is gonna be transferring again, be careful. because just because you got that new clutch and you'll be able to feel that pull again, you're getting all that torque back, you're putting a lot of strain on the other components. For example, this flywheel housing on your old million-mile engine, you're going to be putting more strain on that. So, I mean, when it comes to engine longevity, transmissions longevity, driving these trucks with care goes a long way as well. These are fractures on the overdrive gear. Now, this is going to happen on automated systems. This is going to happen on manual systems. And I'm going to tell you how it happens. You're going down, you're already in overdrive, you're just cruising down the highway, and you let off the fuel and you get back on it. You let off the fuel and you get back on it. You're either not downshifting or you're kind of letting off of it. That whenever you have throttle, you're creating all the tension in the gears. Whenever you let off the throttle, or you of course you let off the throttle, you're taking that stress off the gears, going back on it, coming back off of it, going back on it, coming back off, going back on it. So that style of driving, that erratic style of driving, can cause these stress fractures. Then you got this combined with not changing the oil, and then boom, you have a transmission. And these transmissions are super expensive. It's not like these older model transmissions that you're able to rebuild them and get a decent transmission. A lot of these transmissions are not even rebuildable because the parts availability are not out there, or the knowledge is not out there to rebuild them. So most of the time, and even if you have an older transmission, I would still recommend going with a solid Weller. Weller's pretty well known. It's sold it's sold nationwide. So if you do have a third party shop install a Weller, you will have a good chance. You will still have a good chance of getting that replaced. Still warranty. But keep in mind, warranty is gonna factor in all this stuff. Drivability. Computers are gonna let you know what type of driving habits were going on. Cummins has their report. Cummins report on Insight is basically titled abuse report, and it just highlights anything that's considered abuse where it's driving out of the parameters that it was designed for. Whether the oil got hot, the coolant got hot, higher RPMs driven than it's supposed to. Those are all considered abuse. So when we talk about driving and these particular gears, this gear in particular, the overdrive gear, there's a lot of strain on this gear right here. So if you're running like erratic, driving it like a car, you got to baby these things, man. They're very strong, but all that torque can be pushed down to these one small section, and if it's not applied correctly or slowly, it can break. So I learned an analogy that I saw a while back. I saw, and it was an example of like having an egg between your foot and the pedal. So you don't want to give it too much throttle enough where it's gonna break that egg, and then you just don't want to just dump the fuel off of it. I know sometimes we like to hear turbos, but that pressure that you're coming off that turbo and going on that turbo too hard can cause some damage to the turbo, because one side of the turbo is being spun by exhaust pressure, which is super high pressure, and then the other side is sucking in air through the engine filter, charging it through the air charger, and then pushing it through the intake, creating high pressure. So there's back pressure that ends up happening because you're going to end up creating excessive boost, but which happens. So that back pressure ends up kind of coming up on the front cold side of that turbo, and then you have the exhaust just pushing it as well, which puts a tremendous strain on the shaft of that turbo. So, I mean, all this driving lightly, all it's going to do is help that truck last a lot longer. Do not drive it like a bat out of hell, and don't drive it like your mom's Kia or something. Don't drive it like that. Drive it like
like it's a Maybach, like your Maybach, like you just bought it, your Bentley, your whatever dream vehicle you like, Cadillac it. That's, I mean, you ain't gonna get there any faster. Stay out of the fast lane. Drivers, come on. I know even if your truck is governed, don't be mad at everybody else and just be in the fast lane or the passing lane. I mean, if their trucks are the trucks are governed for a reason, because some of you guys are just gonna do 90, do 100, and all it's gonna do is wear their equipment out. Well, if you get a failure like this on the I shift, I got a guy here says, if you have a transmission fail, is it better you getting a wholly or manufactured one from the dealer is going to be the only option, because these transmissions are not they're not rebuildable locally. Just join the chat to say thank you for the videos, love the content. Greeting from Canada. Yes, sir. Thanks for joining us. I am driving very carefully and most of the time on heels. I put manually in lower gears. This new transmissions are programmed to go low RPMs. I think it's killing the engine on heels. I don't think it should go that low of RPMs. You're right. That puts a lot of strain. I'm going to look more into that. So your I shift was going to go into a lower gear whenever you're that. I would imagine that's going to put more strain on those gears. This is the gears that I'm talking about. When you're in that overdrive gear, you're in those smaller gears like that. So I feel like, yeah, I agree. That would put more strain on these lower gears, which, I mean, to me, I would think would break easier. And that's why I always talk about driving cautiously. Where's that other top view of all the gears? Let me find that one. This one here. Oh, no. Where is it at? This is the Endura. So you're at, well, that's a pretty large gear still. I would just drive, if you feel like, I wouldn't put your RPMs too high if you're shifting manually, but I don't understand why they would do it at a lower RPM too. Maybe they're just trying to get better fuel efficiency. As I mentioned in yesterday's broadcast, today's modern engines are designed to be more efficient instead of just powerhouses like they used to. But I mean, it's a decent trade-off, because the powerhouses burn more fuel, and these newer ones are more efficient. They just take a little bit, and it's not extremely more maintenance. I mean, it's not like a whole, owning 2 trucks type of maintenance. It's just maintenance that you got to keep up with. But I mean, some good information. I appreciate you, everyone that's joined us this evening. We're going to do another broadcast soon. Make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. If you like this type of content, share your comments below. Let me know what you want to talk about on other subjects, and also let me know what type of videos. We got some new videos coming out. If you're in the DFW area, give us a shout, 972-225-3017. We're located off of 4140 Langdon Road, Dallas, Texas, 75241. We're there for all your needs: fleet service, light, medium, heavy duty, RV service. Let us know. We're experts at troubleshooting. Give us a shout. Thanks everybody that's joined us this evening. Make sure to share all this information. Share the channel, and we're going to see you next time. You guys out there, you be safe. We'll holler at you.